Happy Easter, everyone, and welcome to another episode of My Week in Horror. I am the Artie Dans. This is episode 11, and in this one, we're going to look at Japanese movies that have the suffix of the dead in the title. This is one of my favorite types of films to look at. So, in this episode, I have picked 4 movies. 2 of them should be very familiar to you if you're a long-time viewer of this channel. So let's have a look at what tonight's lineup is. We've got Phone of the Dead. We've got Romance of the Dead. We have Toilet of the Dead. And we have Lust of the Dead. As mentioned, I've covered a couple of these movies already on this series, but it'd be nice to have them in one video. So first up, let's have a look at something that we haven't covered before. Let's have a look at Phone of the Dead. Thank you, Dan. This is an interesting movie because this is one I've been wanting to watch for a very long time, and I finally got a chance to see it because it stars Amy Tomite, one of my favorite actresses. She's the girl from Sion Sono's Anti-Porno, who shows all the assets off. And I didn't realize until doing some research on it, but she's an ex-member of AKB48, which is, mind is completely blown. So anyway, let's check out what this film is about. 3 awkward guys, a nerd with love issues, a guy who thinks he's hot stuff, and a chubby guy who loves to eat, travel to the countryside for the screening of a film. While sightseeing around the area, they find a mobile phone on the ground and manage to reunite it with its owner, a gorgeous young woman who is willing to spend time with them. As they drive her around, their car gets a flat tire, and they end up at the residence of an older couple who appear to be serial killers and cannibals. While trying to evade them, they all discover it's a terrible misunderstanding. They have dinner with them and spend the night. However, the true horror is about to begin. So I really didn't know what to expect going into this film. I actually thought it was going to be a different film than what it ended up to be. What it is a very low budget thriller, horror, comedy movie. Probably more comedy horror and probably more comedy. And it's very low budget. You can tell by the way it's shot, the quality of the film, even the quality of the sound editing. When the cameras change angles, you get different sound effects and different background sounds in the audio track. So there's definitely a bit of an issue with the film. So it definitely holds its low budget, low quality badge with a bit of pride. But it also managed to get Amy Tomite. So I can't imagine she would have been cheap. And this is coming after she did Anti-Porno and some of her other movies and I think she started in The Vampire Diaries after this film. So whether this was just a little fun side project for her, whether this was actually shot ages ago and was just finally released in 2019, I don't know. But if you like classic horror films, there is a shitload, and I mean a shitload, of references to older films in this movie. And a lot of stuff that I didn't even pick up that are in this film, especially the obsession with The Shining in this film. But there is a lot of really good older American-style horror movies that are referenced in this film. And then for some reason, it reminds me a little bit of I Am a Hero. And I don't really understand why, because you couldn't probably get 2 movies further apart from each other. And I think it's because the main character of this film daydreams a hell of a lot. And always in his head, he's always playing out scenes, how they're going to play out. And then, of course, they play out either exactly the way that he intends them to, or they play out completely oppositely. Which kind of gives a bit of the movie away, but also makes you understand that the movie's padding a lot of its runtime. It's not even a long movie to start with, just on 80 minutes, and there's a lot of padding. Now, the film does something very odd, or unique, or good. I don't know which one it is. It gets to the halfway point of the movie, where all the misunderstandings come to fruition, and then the movie rewinds all the way back, and you actually see it rewinding all the way back. And it then starts to skip forward back to the point where it was rewinding, but highlighting certain scenes that you need to pay attention to. Because what happens is the whole movie is a bit of a misunderstanding that that the older couple think these 3 or 4 young people, the 3 boys and the girl, are robbers who are breaking into their house. So they're trying to protect their house by, chasing after them. They misunderstand and think that they're serial killers and cannibals because I see them with blood and they've got, weapons that are, are giving them off that vibe. So it gets to the point where they actually, realize it's a misunderstanding. And then the movie turns into this kind of strange little drama for a brief period of time. And then it takes another turn. And I don't want to tell you what that turn is because that's a bit of a spoiler. But the problem with it taking a turn is that it's told from the perspective of the nerdy love guy who spends most of the movie daydreaming. So then you get to the point where you think, okay, so is this bit now a daydream? Or is it real? And so it got towards the end of the film and I still wasn't sure, am I seeing what's actually supposed to be happening in the movie? Or is it just his daydream? And I think that's where the movie falters. Otherwise, it had potential to be a really great low budget comedy horror, just missed its mark quite a bit. So, using the ghost rating, which stands for great horror or stupid trash, I'm going to only award this 2 ghosts. It's not a great start to this episode, but it does get a bit better. So 2 ghosts for this one, because I think that at times it's a bit slow, and at times it's a bit annoying. And I don't like the fact that the movie doesn't know what it wants to be, and I don't like the fact that I felt tricked by the end of it. But then the ending was alright. It was alright. If you need to watch this film, it's really hard to find. So I'm not sure if your desire to really watch this film will pay off by the time you actually do watch it. But if you can find it and you're after something a bit different from Japan, this whole episode is Japanese movies anyway, give it a bash. So that is Bone of the Dead. Now, on to the next film. The next film I'm going to look at is a Noboru Iguchi movie because the other 2 movies are from Naoyuki Tomomatsu. So I kind of wanted to put them together. This is Zombie Ass Toilet of the Dead. And yes, I own a Blu-ray of this movie. And no, it's not an original. This I actually picked up in Shenzhen in China in a bootleg DVD store that was selling pirate discs. And this was about, I'd say $3 Australian. Oh, excuse me, $3 Australian. And it took me ages to watch this film. By the time I watched it, I was in utter stitches. So let's check out what the synopsis of Zombie Ass Toilet of the Dead is about. To sum up the story, a group of teens travel to the forest in search of a trout with tapeworms. One of the members of the group is a model who wants to be thinner so she can land more jobs and is convinced that this tapeworm is her ticket to fame. In this group is a schoolgirl called Megumi, who is racked with guilt over the death of her sisters to some school bullies. She makes it her mission to keep the group safe. The story isn't too important though, because for 80 minutes you're entertained by zombies, parasites, tentacles, farting, naked schoolgirls, more tentacles, a flying queen parasite, and a farting jetpack. Only the Japanese could make a movie this ridiculous and get away with it. And you know what? That's the power of Noboru Iguchi. He makes silly films like this and he can get away with it. Now, I like this film because it stars one of my favorite actresses, Asami. And I didn't realize that she was in this film until I actually decided to look at her filmography. And she has a very small part in it as a zombie who farts. And everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people fart in this movie. So if you like farting, and if you're one of those people like me who will fart and laugh themselves to death, or hear someone else fart and just start laughing uncontrollably, this movie has you covered. Farting jetpack is one of the greatest things I've ever seen in splatter cinema. And make no mistake, this is along the lines of splatter, but doesn't quite reach the splatter heights of, Tokyo Gore Police. The great thing about this movie is that we're combining 3 different types of effects here. So we've got traditional makeup effects, we've got the a bit of stop motion animation. Yes, there is some stop motion in there, and there's a bit of CGI to come together, and it all blends together quite well. I'm not going to pick on each individual element because the sum of all parts make this film, and make this film for what it is, an entertaining 80 minutes. Don't forget, cinema does not need to be serious, and this movie Noboru Iguchi's back catalogue proves that you don't need to take anything seriously. It does help that the lead actress is super cute. Narisa Nakamura is the actress in the film, and she's very flat-chested. So if you like boobs, She shows her boobs in this movie, but you're going to be going, where are they? But that's body shaming, so don't do that. There is an unnecessary shower scene in the film, which is very Iguchi style. And then the end of the film where she fights the parasite queen is spent with her top cut open and her tit popped out. So, if that's what you're looking for, you're going to get it. There's no Iguchi style sex in this film. So it's he does follow the silliness along. Now, I have an issue with this film in that it's called Toilet of the Dead, but the toilet scene is quite brief. And it happens after the girl who eats the tapeworm starts to experience stomach cramps, and so she needs to take a shit. And so they find this place with an outhouse, and she goes there, pulls down her pants, tries to take a shit, does take a shit, and shits all over a zombie. And essentially, that's your toilet scene right there. Does it keep to its name? Maybe, because that's where we first see the zombies, in the toilet. Now, being an Iguchi film, being one of those splatter comedy horrors, it's not a very consistent movie in regards to stories. And maybe you won't notice it, but I notice things like she'll be wearing her backpack in one scene, and then she won't be wearing it in another scene. A bit of continuity errors, but kind of who cares? And also, the fact that the main actress looks young, and the fact that she's attempting to be a schoolgirl may make some people uncomfortable. Then again, if you're uncomfortable by that kind of thing, I think the title of the movie and the picture on the front cover is probably put you off already. But in regards to a different spin on zombies, yeah, well, not really, because they're still lumbering dumb idiots who still eat for brains. It's just that they're all controlled by a tapeworm. So that is a different spin on zombies, Dan. Okay. But if you like farting, I think this movie's got you covered. And when I think of the great farting scenes in movie, I think of The Nutty Professor, the Eddie Murphy remake, where they're farting around the table. And of course, I think of Blazing Saddles, which has the best farting scene in any movie ever. You cannot tell me that anything's better than that. Jetpack farting in this probably puts it number 2 above Nutty Professor farting. So using the great horror or stupid trash rating, I'm going to give this movie 3 ghosts because of the humor factor in it, because it's Iguchi, because it has a brief scene of Asami in it, and because I think you should watch it, because you should watch silly films. And this is one of the better of the Dead movies that you can watch. Now, everyone's going to say One Cut of the Dead's the best of the Dead movie ever. And you're right, but we're not covering it in this episode. We're covering these films. And I think you should go watch Zombie Ass. Now, a message from me. Pardon the interruption, everyone. I thought I'd just take a brief moment of your time to tell you about how The Arty Dans is on all those social media sites. So firstly, you can find me on Facebook at Arty Dans. You can find me on Instagram at The Arty Dans. You can find me on Reddit as The Arty Dans. You can also find me on the web at www.theartydans.com, and you can also find me on Odyssey as, take a guess, The Arty Dans. Thank you, and let's get back to the video. Thank you, me. Now, we're going to look at the next 2 films separately, but bear in mind they're from the same director. And the first one we're going to look at is Romance of the Dead. I think it's called Love Story Romance of the Dead. And this is made after the next movie that we're going to look at. And there are elements of that movie in this movie. So let's check out what the synopsis of this one is about. Shota and Hitomi seem to be the only 2 students at their high school. One rainy afternoon, Hitomi seduces Shota on the couch of an office and fucks him senseless while crying. Due to the lack of English subtitles, I can't tell you exactly why she was crying. The guy Shota lives with, or works with, or whatever, seems to be obsessed with the zombies that appear to be invading Japan. Now that Shota and Hitomi seem to be a couple, she takes him back to her house, but she's actually harboring a secret. She's killed a zombie and needs his help to dispose of the body. But something else is happening to Hitomi. Her body is changing and she's not pregnant. So I've always found one of the most fun things to do with Japanese movies is to watch them without English subtitles, because then you can kind of make up the story as you go along. Didn't really need to make up this one because it was pretty obvious what was going on in this. So there is no English subtitled version that I'm aware of, unless it's been fan subbed. But this is very much a Naoki Tomomatsu film. Very much. It has his fingerprints all over it, to the point where he's even thrown in references to his first film, Stacy, in this film. This movie doesn't have too much zombies in it, unlike the next movie. This movie seems to be dealing with a zombie outbreak that happens in Japan, but it's specifically focusing on Hitomi only and what's happening to her. And there's a bit of backstory with her having, she's living with a guy who sexually attacks her. I don't know if it's a father or a boyfriend, because again, no English subtitles. Maybe it's a brother. That's pretty incestuous. That would be typical of Tomomatsu. Meh. But what this movie does have is his trademark sound effects. Those really kind of wet sound effects. You know exactly the ones if you've seen this movie or the next movies that I'm talking about. This movie stars Anne Koshi, and it actually has a lot of the cast of the next movie, Lust of the Dead, in this one as well. They all play different roles, but a lot of the cast are recognizable, and you will, if you know those films, you'll see them here. So clearly he works with the same people, and everyone must have a hell of a great time on set with this guy, because why else would you keep working with him? But it does have Anne Koshi, who's from My Chan's Daily Life, which is a real fucked up film. Really fucked up. Now, Anne Koshi, as well as quite a few of the other girls in this film, are AV stars. So hence they've got no objections to showing off their tits. And there's a lot of sex in this movie. It's all kind of out of place. It's all kind of awkward. It's all kind of Tomomatsu. So typical. I mean, there's a sex scene at the start where the dude's got one finger inside her and one hand on her boob. She's crying and he's got this stoic look on his face. And it's a very unsexy sex scene. Now, the film is all practical effects. Heaps and heaps and heaps of blood. I wouldn't class this as a splatter film, but the scenes of blood are kind of everywhere. And if you don't like blood, again, you probably shouldn't be watching any of the movies in this series, in this video. But there is a lot of blood. And there's strange eating. So I always thought zombies eat brains. Why is she eating intestines? And I think The Walking Dead has something to explain about that. Another thing I really like that puts the stamp on that this is a Tomomatsu film is that there's a lot of guerrilla shooting in it. And there's a scene of garbage collectors collecting garbage, which you can clearly tell he's just chased garbage collectors around and filmed them. He does not have a single permit to shoot anything. And all the scenes are just devoid of people in the background. There are no extras. There are no accidental people. It's just, the two of them are walking down a desolate street, which doesn't make any sense. It's Japan. And they go to a school and there's no other fucking students there. No one. In fact, the only scene where we actually have more than a handful of people is when, towards the end, when Shota is being told by this scientist lady about the zombies that are happening in Japan. There's about 10 zombies in the background. That's about it. That's the most people you'll get on the scene. And again, in typical Tomomatsu fashion, there's a lot of talking, a lot of sex, and a lot of talking. And because of that, I didn't have the English subtitles. I had no idea what the fuck they were talking about. And you'll see, as in the next films, usually the talking is relevant. Usually he has some kind of social message that he wants to tell. It's just wrapped around a blanket of boobs and blood. So that's Romance of the Dead. I don't think I can quite recommend this film because I'm not sure there's much value in this one over the next ones. So using the ghost rating, great horror or stupid trash, I would give this film 2 ghosts because Anne Koshi's in it and she's naked all the way through. But I really hate her voice. And I'm not sure if that's her real voice or if she puts on this cutesy voice for all her movies because it's really It gets to the point where you just don't want her to talk. It's a really annoying voice, kind of like mine. So anyway, that's Romance of the Dead from Naoki Tomomatsu. Now we're going to look at the final movie in this video, and it's not one movie, it's 5. Thank you, Dan. Now what are we going to look at is quite possibly one of the most popular movies that I've ever talked about on this channel, and that is the Lust of the Dead series, also known as Rape Zombie. Every time I make a video about this, I tend to get a lot of views. And I have a live stream I did with Wilco before that gets a lot of views because I think people think it's the full movie and they get confused. And I'm really sorry if that's the case, but it's not. It's just us talking shit about this film. This is a 5-part movie series that I don't think was ever intended to be more than one part. So firstly, let's check out the synopsis. And this synopsis covers all 5 films. This 5-movie-long series follows a group of survivors of a zombie apocalypse in Japan that infects the males only, turning them into lusty sex machines that attack every woman they see. We follow 4 women who take refuge at a temple with a virgin otaku priest who hasn't turned due to his inability to form relationships with 3D women. The series then follows some of those survivors as they head over to a women's shelter/fortress until North Korea decides to nuke Japan. In the wastelands of the old Japan, rival factions use the zombies for their own purposes, and the US military gets involved. We then cut to the future, where a handful of scientists have worked out how to time travel and attempt to go back in time to stop the events of the zombie apocalypse. But by the time we get to the 5th movie, it's revealed that everything was just the imagination of a few high school boys who were sick of being rejected and humiliated by the girls of their campus. I know that this seems like a silly splatter series, but trust me when I tell you, there's a lot to unpack in the 5 movies that come in this. Now, you don't need to watch all 5 films. You can watch parts 1, 3, and 5 and get a really good idea of the sense of what's going on in this film. Because I think the first 3 movies are a trilogy, and I believe that the movies 2 and 3 should never have existed in the first place. I think number 1 proved to be a bit popular, or they enjoyed it, and so he quickly made a 2 and 3. And then what happens is that he then made a 4 and 5, I think to round off the story, or he might have had some more crazy ideas. I don't exactly know the backstory about this, and I would love to. I know you're a subscriber of my channel, Tomomatsu, so maybe one day you can explain everything to me. But this movie features a smorgasbord, and when I say smorgasbord, you lose count of AV actresses that are in this film. Every woman in this series gets naked. Pretty sure every woman in this series gets naked, so you don't have to wait. And there's non-stop boobs throughout the whole thing. There's non-stop sex, a lot of zombie sex throughout the whole movie. So if that's your thing, you're going to love it. But what I hated was that the movies have a tendency to recap the last movie. And that's fine, because part 2 has like a 3-minute recap of the first movie. But then part 3 has like a 6-minute recap. Part 4 has about a 12-minute recap. And by the time you get to part 5, a third of the movie is recaps of the previous 4 movies, which means that there's not too much original footage going on. That's kind of annoying, because if you watch the movies back to back, you don't need those recaps. You'll skip them, and thus you'll get through 4 and 5 really quickly, if you can find 4 and 5. That's the second bit. And then the third bit is finding 4 and 5 with English subtitles. That's a challenge in itself. Asami's in this, and Asami's great in this because she gets cloned. So at one stage, there's 8 Asamis in the film, done with some clever trick photography. Well done, Tomomatsu. He also uses his idol song. Now, Tomomatsu has made this a really annoying pop song that plays throughout the first couple of episodes. And in fact, that annoying idol pop song is the catalyst for the whole series, because the girl who sings it gives birth to the savior. Virgin Mary, Jesus Christ. Very well done, Tomomatsu. Nice little reference there. The child that she gives birth to is supposed to be able to save the human race. Now, Tomomatsu does make an appearance in parts 2 and 3 as this kind of leader of this. The best way to describe it is that he's this kind of, I hate to use the word right wing, but, you know, of this men's only group who hate women. And like, he's the leader trying to rile all these guys up. It's quite funny. Now, there is a bit of trivia with this movie because one of the actresses who's in parts 1, 2, and 3, her name escapes me off the top of my head. When they made parts 4 and 5, they couldn't get in contact with this actress. So with the tight time frame going, they just shot parts 4 and 5 without her, changing the actress over. And uniquely, what you get then is that when there are the recaps of parts 1, 2, and 3 in parts 4 and 5, they edit it so that you don't see that woman's face. And then if you do need to see the woman's face, they've got the new actress spliced in over the top of it. It's quite off-putting because it's never fun when you're watching a movie series to have an actor replace another actor for the same character. And then, you know, you're just thinking, oh, I know who that actress or actor is, and now they've changed them. Now, there is a funny scene that happens in this movie, in the series, where they need to time travel. And the way that they time travel is by having an orgasm. And it is just, only Tomomatsu could come up with this. And there's like multiple dildos that bring this woman to orgasm. And when she climaxes, that gives her enough energy to time travel. That's fucked. Like, only in Japan. That's just fucked. And then the movie ends in the high school where almost every cast member, minus Asami and the other actress, are formed there. And then we get this idea that the otaku guy comes up with this story of a zombie apocalypse only attacking men and turning them into raping machines. And then you realize, okay, well, the movie's just a figment of their imagination. Vivid figment of their imagination. I think this is Tomomatsu looking back at his high school and making a movie about it. I don't see this as any other way. This is a very personal project for this director, and it comes across very clear. And he covers a lot of things. He covers war. He covers science. There's a lot of philosophy in the movies. Scenes of just talking about scientific discoveries and things that have happened in the past in history. You get a history lesson with this film. You don't want a history lesson, but you get it with this film. It's really weird. There's a lot of deep and hidden shit in this series beyond just lusting zombies sexually attacking women. Yeah, that's a sentence that I said. Using the ghost rating, great horror or stupid trash. I can't rate all 5 movies individually because I've done that in a separate video. So I'm going to rate the series. Did I say rape? I'm going to rate the series as a whole. And I'm going to say 3 ghosts for the entire series. Providing that you only watch 1, 3, and 5 and kind of skip 4 and 2 because they're kind of unnecessary. There's fun to be had. If you can overcome the really poor special effects, the terrible blue screening, the fact that people are running on the spot pretending to run, that's fucking hilarious, to be honest. I love that bit. But you've really got to get over, this movie was made on a very small budget with the pure intention of just, you know, probably selling 1,000, 2,000 units on DVD to a bunch of Westerners. And that's it. That was all they're intended. It pads out people's filmographies, but it's a fucking fun series to watch. If you can find part 5 that sums everything up, then you hit gold. So that's it. That is 4, technically 5, 6, 7, 8, technically 8 of the Dead movies that we've covered, but 4 series. Which one was your favorite of the lot? If you've seen any of them, what do you think of them? I've got a video coming up about monster movies that was recommended to me to ask me to make, and I am in the process of making it because I've got to watch them, and I'm having a little bit of fun with that. So look out for that soon. We're going to be looking at some monster movies. Otherwise, what do you think of Japanese of the Dead movies that isn't One Cut of the Dead? I would like to know in the comments below what you thought of them, or if you've got any recommendations. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time. Happy Easter if you're watching this on the day of release, which is Easter Day. Happy Easter. I'll catch you next time. Like and subscribe, all that other bullshit. I'm the Artie Dans. This is My Week in Horror. See you next time.